to have amazing power over this world through spiritual forces is really endless. Now, today I think Fleur was wanting to talk about using energy, basic energy work and such like that, yeah?
Would you be willing to?
Absolutely. I'm an open slate today. So well, let's start out with questions. Do you have any like common questions? It's things that you
What's basic practice for setting up an energy or getting used to controlling it?
Okay. So the first thing is to be able to sense it. It really before you can change anything, you've got to become aware of it, obviously. And okay, so let's look at the effects that you would use that for. So, Fleur, what would you want to use that kind of magic for? Like energy manipulation and energy work?
It depends on the situation.
Like you personally, give me a situation.
Usually protection.
Okay.
I've done it a little bit to manipulate outcomes for financial reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So protection, prosperity. I know a lot of people go into psychic healers or energy workers to promote some sort of healing. I myself, I had some really, really deep-rooted psychological, emotional issues that were from childhood that in my adult life were just like destroying me. And I went to every 12-step group I could. I went to every therapist. I paid therapists a fortune to try to help me, and none of them could. Went to a guy here at Red Mountain Spa, and he did energy work. We did about half hour of talk therapy where he was just kind of figuring out what the problem was. Did an energy, really it was a chakra blockage removal, and gave me some advice on how to maintain that. And like from that moment, my life changed completely. It was like all the stuff that was holding me back, all the stuff that was standing in my own way was just gone. I could feel him literally reach his hands, and he wasn't touching me physically at all. He was just off of my skin just a bit, but I could feel like psychic hands coming through my chakras, and it felt like they were coming into my body and pulling out objects. It felt like objects were being pulled out of me. So this stuff can be a very tangible thing. That's with these energies and this kind of power. It's really easy if you haven't experienced it to chalk it up all to some sort of fantasy or role play or whatever. But when you have experienced it, you know it's not. You know that this is just as tangible as the world around us, sometimes more so. So how to get into that state is to first become aware of it. So if you want to do something for protection, obviously you've got to be aware of the need for protection, and then be aware of the energy that surrounds you and the energy that surrounds possibly the person you're wanting to be protected from, the situation that is coming at you. That's a really, really important part of manipulating energy, specifically to nullify it. So if there's a force coming to you, you've got to know kind of why it's coming at you, what the intention is. You've got to kind of have some of these things at least felt out a little bit in order for you to really nullify it or push it off course. One of the ways that I would suggest to do that is to get into any kind of divination system. So you can use like tarot, runes, I Ching. I would avoid things like the Ouija boards. Those are not reliable, and they usually kind of open up communication to spirits that you really don't need in your life. It's going to attract any kind of wandering entities that happen to be around. They're going to come and tell you that they're some great something or another and try to hook you in. Pendulums can be all right for divination systems. That still relies on the audiometer effect. So you got these little trembles that are going on in your hands that you're not even aware of that are pushing the pendulum around or pushing the thing on the Ouija board. And so you can really easily manipulate the outcome of that kind of divination just by believing it. Like if you take a lie detector test, it doesn't register whether or not you're lying. It registers whether or not you think you're lying because of the physiological reaction. Heart rate changes, blood pressure changes, and so if you believe that you're right, if you can do that kind of self-hypnosis, you'll pass it like that. Same thing with pendulum. You'll hold it, and you'll go, okay, so I want you to swing this way for yes or this way for no, or clockwise and counterclockwise. If you really, really want an answer to go one way or another, you can manipulate it completely. So those aren't really reliable. But what you're learning in any of these divination systems is you're learning to get inside and trust your intuition. Even the most atheistic people I know, they'll say, "Oh, yeah, you're into some weird stuff, and it's all just fake." And after you talk to them for a bit, they go, "Yeah, I have had some weird experiences," and then they'll usually tell about experiences of a connection specifically with women, connections with their mothers. That my mom had a dream and I had that same dream, or I was in trouble, my mom called me. There's a psychic connection that exists between those that they go, "Oh, yeah," and they'll even say, "It's just women's intuition." Well, what is women's intuition? Women being the receptive and not necessarily passive, but definitely the receptive lunar force would be more capable of receiving from another woman, another lunar alignment. So so what is that? That's what I would call divination. They want to call it intuition, whatever. It's the same thing. The more you learn how to trust that, the better off you'll be with everything. Almost every time anybody has something serious go down, they go, "Oh, I had this little feeling. I had a feeling I should have turned left, or I had a feeling I should have done this or that." Listen to that, and you're not going to have a lot of those things happen. Of course, you don't know that until after you screwed up. Like after things have gone bad, and you're like, "Oh, if only I would have." And so divination systems will help you start to become aware of the energies, not necessarily in a conscious way, because you're looking at the cards, you're reading the cards, or you're doing the runes, you're trying to answer questions. You're not necessarily thinking about the energy of it, but you're still connecting with it in an intuitive way. Another way to do this is to learn how to see auras. Right here is a perfect type of position that you're in to be able to see people's auras. I've got a completely neutral, well, not really neutral, but a solid background. That's perfect. Lighting's all right, and you're sitting far enough away. And so, in that state, you want to. And are y'all attending college right now? Okay. Okay. Well, in that case, you should go to church sometimes, because this is a really, really good time to do this. You have an hour of sitting there staring at people who are talking about nothing, and you can just look at them and practice seeing auras. So you look at them and you just let your eyes unfocus. And what you want to do is you want to try to look not at them, but through them. Try to look through them to the wall that's behind them. Or you can look over to one of their shoulders and just kind of fix your attention there and let your peripheral vision fade out a bit. And the secret of seeing and interacting with things of a spiritual nature is that if you're trying to do it, you're going to fail. As soon as you stop trying, it just comes to life. And so if you're struggling going, I want to see his aura, it's not going to work. As soon as you just let your mind kind of drift, you'll start to see a light develop around that person. And then seeing color, some people will see vibrant color. Does anybody here see auras, by the way? Perfect. Do y'all see color?
Rarely.
Okay, rarely? Yeah. Would you?
No, that's very often. Maybe once I get a purple out of yours.
That's cool. No, good to know. All right. Now, when you see color, how vibrant is it?
It depends on the person. When I'm okay, so I can see yours right now, and it has some glitter around the edges, but for the most part, I've seen his do this huge ass burst of this beautiful purple heat.
Was that in ritual or meditation or anything? Or?
He was expressing, like he was talking about something that he was enjoying, like he was not necessarily around that, but he was very excited about what he was talking about.
Oh wow, okay. And what about you? Do you see vibrant colors, or do you see it all the time, or do you have to tune into it?
I have to tune into it.
Okay. Is that something you learned how to do, or you just kind of?
It's just something I love it.
Okay. All right. No, that's awesome. For me, it kind of just awakened when I was just sitting in church. I mean, once again, it's boring. Like, you got nothing to do but stare at the person up front. And I started seeing the light develop around him. At the same time, I'd feel a loss of equilibrium. Like, as their aura would get more intense, I'd feel like the floor dropped out from underneath me, and I was just like floating in space. And then it would get brighter, and I'll see colors in flashes from time to time, but seeing is not necessarily important. I'll more rely on what I'm feeling about it. So as soon as you're connected with somebody's aura to the point you can see it, you can trigger an empathic link that you can start to feel what they're feeling. You can have their thoughts kind of just spill into your mind, and a really good place to do this is if you can go to anywhere public, like a park, a mall, something like that, and then watch people connect to their aura, and then just let yourself receive what they're going through, what happened that day, how they're feeling. It's a really cool thing. It gives you insight into just masses of people instantly. The bad side is sometimes it's hard to shut off. So if you start doing that constantly, you're going to find that it's just you're bombarded with people's emotions and thoughts constantly, and you've got to kind of put walls up. Once you're connected with the vision of their aura, you'll be able to feel what's inside of them. You'll be connected with that energy. Once you can do that when you're looking at somebody in the room across from you, you can do the same thing no matter where they're at in the world. There's no... All of magic is really conducted at the crossroads, at a meeting point between the spiritual and the physical. If you're doing a ritual, you're elevating yourself to a higher spiritual state, and spirituality is descending to you, meeting in the middle. So the way you do this is just to think about the person or the situation. Situations will have energy as well. Situations on the astral and causal planes, sometimes on the mental planes, actually create constructs. The future is already playing out on the astral plane before it plays out here. So you can see the energy of a situation just by thinking about it. And then maintaining the same kind of detached observation that you use when you're seeing an aura. So you kind of think about the situation, and for those of you that can see auras, have you done it enough that you can feel the click when you actually enter into the aura seeing state? Like almost like a slight fall or a rise or a sidestep in your own being. Yeah. So yeah, you want to trigger that, and it does for me. It just feels like I fall just a little bit, like almost a physiological, like my body just fell. You want to trigger that while you're thinking about the situation, and then just let yourself receive. The biggest part of this, the hardest part of this, is trusting yourself. It's we've really been taught really, really, really strongly to not trust ourselves. That, that's just your imagination, or, you just have your head in the clouds. Well, no, maybe you're a prophet that's receiving, revelation. I don't know. Most of the time when you receive those impressions and you have that click in your being that kind of confirms it, if you go with it, it turns out to actually bear a pretty good fruit. And so doing that's going to connect you with the energy of it, and then you can kind of start to manipulate it. It's really difficult if you've got an energy that's already in motion. So an effect that's already working towards manifestation. It's really difficult to cancel that completely. Just like it's really difficult to get a situation that's not in motion to just move. It's a lot easier to use something that's already in motion, use the force it has. I mean, it's, jujitsu. You're using the motion of the thing coming towards you to throw it across the room. And so if you've got an enemy that's coming at you, that enemy is filled with usually anger, hatred, sometimes jealousy and fear is buried under there. You can, rather than trying to hit it with love and you're like, I'm going to push so much love, he's not even going to want to do anything. No, that's not going to be as productive as turning his fear, taking those buried emotions and turning them against him, making it so he starts to kind of direct inwards all of his issues that he's been projecting onto you. Just using that if there's actually somebody who's trying to harm you. And so what you'd have to do is rather than trying to nullify completely the energy that's coming at you, you feed it some more of that energy, and then you direct it intentionally off course. So just like, a train's coming down and it's going to like run off the tracks or whatever, rather than trying to stop it, if you're able to switch tracks and get it on a safer track, it's just going to keep going. It's going to take a lot of force to stop it, much more than it is to just divert it. So, what sorts of things would you want protection from? If I'm not getting too personal.
I've been around people, and you just feel yourself being drained, just energy-wise. So, but then I usually just, I'm okay with that. But something that I have been curious about is every now and then, I get this sort of pulsing in my ear. And it'll either be a pulsing in my ear or actual ringing. Either be this ear or this ear. And depending on, I can tell if it's negative or positive. And I know that I am either being talked about or, like, in some way, I'm being brought into people's conversation.
Yeah.
I was wondering if there's a way that you can actually, like, follow that, like, you grab onto it and, like, follow.
Yeah, you do basically the exact opposite of what I just said, where, so if you start out by looking at the energy or aura of a person or a situation, and then you kind of see what that feels like, you just do the opposite. You connect to the feeling of that pulse, relax yourself, and then just, you can follow it and let it come through. Okay, so the biggest issue with that is that, well, you're probably not dealing with, like, people who are, adept ritual magicians or anything, are you?
I think one of them was, the first time that she did something, I kind of let her because she was a friend of a friend. The second time, I did something back, and she has seen.
Okay.
But instead of, like, actually, like, stopping her from doing it, because I don't think she'll want to and propose that. But I would like to instead be like, hey, who is this? So instead I can actually get information from them.
Yeah. No, you can definitely do that. Here's one of the biggest issues with doing that is that it's really hard to not insert your own ideas into it. Okay, so for instance, I can read tarot for just about anybody and be spot on. I mean, I've done it for years. I did it for, like, that was the sole way that I made money, and I made a good amount of money doing that. And I just had people over to my apartment. I'd read for them, and they'd usually pay me a couple $100, and then that was it. And I was spot on. People were making $100,000 investments based on what I was telling them, and they were winning. I'll have people just come in completely cold, never seen me before, and I'll tell them everything about their lives. But I have a hard time reading for myself because I'm too close to the situation. So I'll, like, start to insert my own ideas, my own thoughts, my own kind of bias into the reading. So the same thing can happen. Like, if you're already suspecting that somebody's, working against you in some way or another, and then you kind of try to intuit it, it's sometimes hard to discern between what's you and what's the intuition,
So the more emotionally involved, the less objective you are.
Exactly. Now, the way that you can kind of counteract that is through entering into a really good meditative state. And, the funny thing is you got all these different systems that are all saying, we're right and everybody else is wrong. Or you've got all these systems that are really competing, but they're all not only teaching the same things, that the actual core principles are the same. And one of them is that the highest states that you can reach of spiritual enlightenment is non-attachment. Now, that doesn't mean non-emotional or that you don't care about things. But you're not invested in objects or events. That whether you get this car or that car really doesn't matter to you. Who wins an election, you don't care about. You're concerned about people around you, people in general, sure. If the person that you're with in a relationship happens to do something that offends you or whatever, that's not going to define who you are. That's the big teaching behind every spiritual practice. Is that if you want to get serious enlightenment, that you detach from objects and events. That you care about them, you're concerned, you're going to try to push things, but your identity isn't tied up into it. And unfortunately, that's what just about everybody does. I think it looks like this generation is moving away from that more than our parents did. Our parents were pretty concerned about the status and better than the Joneses. I think that's going away, so that's good. But yeah, the closer you are the more emotionally invested you are in the situation, the more you're going to kind of impact it and affect it. And so the way to get out of that is to kind of rise above it to the point that you're beyond normal emotion. It's not like you don't feel anything, but in that moment of meditation, your emotional scale is so broad and so clear, I think, that you're not going to have those emotions jump in and kind of take control of the intuition. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So yeah, if you get yourself into a really good, solid meditative state, and then connect to the energy or to the pulsing, you should be able to get a clear image of who that might be. Now, if you don't know the person, if it's for some reason a conversation that's going on between people that you've never met that somehow have come across you, that can be harder because then you just might get images. And you're like, okay, so it's a guy with a beard. Like, big deal. Like, how do you narrow that down? Well, you can't, and I guess if your intention is to extract information, then basically connect to it. And are you able to get impressions of what's being said, or you just get?
Just that emotions, like, and very, very vague.
Have you ever done anything with spirit communication? Okay. Okay, you've spoken with your mom?
I've never actually said a word. Well, yes, actually, once.
And you've like heard words or intuited them?
She spoke through me.
Oh, she spoke through you. That's pretty amazing. Has anybody here had a spirit communication experience at all? Okay, it's super easy. Is anybody afraid of communicating with spirits, first of all? Okay, good.
Communication with another individual. It's alive or dead.
Well, and when you're getting with spirit communication, I personally kind of avoid dead spirits because they're just not that interesting to me. Like, people have this assumption, and I mean, some really, really smart, enlightened people that I know have an assumption that for some reason when some asshole dies, that he becomes all of a sudden this godly, all-knowing thing. It's like, no, you're still an asshole. And so, and really what's left behind isn't even that person at the core. The Atman, the eternal self, has already gone and done whatever it does after this life. What's left is kind of like the echoes of that person, the echoes of the personality throughout the different dimensions. And so you're just talking to a shadow. What I'm more interested in is talking to entities that are not at all human, that have a completely different But communication with spirits is pretty easy, especially if you're already able to tap into intuition. The key is you have to ask questions, you have to trust yourself, and you have to make the experience real. Okay, so the way that I would do this is you kind of combine asking questions and making it real into one exercise by writing your questions down beforehand. So figure out what you want to know. I suggest 5 questions that you want to ask this spirit, any spirit. And so you've got the 5 questions, and what happens is the first 2, maybe 3, while you're getting the answer, you're going to go, this is probably just my imagination. This is just me making shit up. As you continue though, each question and the answer you get is going to be more detailed, more precise. It's going to be in vocabulary that maybe you don't use, put together in a way that you don't put your sentences together, sometimes in languages that you don't know. And so as you get this, you're going to start to see very clearly that you're in communication with something that is not you at all. So I say 5 questions written down with enough space for the answers in between them, or 1 per page is good. Because sometimes you get a lot more information than you thought you were going to. And why you have them written down is because when you get into these deeper states, you're moving away from theta. So normally, you're moving away from alpha and beta brainwaves. So normally your brainwaves are anywhere between 14 to 30 some hertz. Now, when you drop into meditation, you go into like a 7 to 14, sometimes 4 to 14, depending on the measurements. And you're holding there at that low state, and then you start triggering these spikes of off the charts brainwave activity that you're not conscious of. You might feel it as electrical shocks. Like a lot of people, while they're Falling asleep is when you naturally will trigger this. Daydreaming or meditating, that as you're doing it, you'll kind of feel a little jolt go through your body. That, I'm not saying it is, because I don't know, but I think that could be definitely related to those spikes occurring. This is when most people have their spontaneous spirit materializations as well. They have a visitation from a dead loved one while they're like falling asleep or while they're waking up. They're dropping into that theta state. And so in this theta state, you're not using that much of your brain actively. Therefore, your memory is not working that wonderfully. And so you'll get there, and the spirit's going to be in front of you or with you. You'll be able to feel it there, and you'll have forgotten what you wanted to ask. Like, it happens so much, so often that it's ridiculous. So have them written down, and then ask the question. Go into that inside space, and let the answer come. Sometimes, some people hear audible voices. Anybody here hear voices? Okay. I don't too often.
The voices are communicated. Internal or external?
Yeah, I'm more, in that case, more external. Okay. And I'll hear like blips of stuff here and there, but nothing like a full conversation. The internal is much more common and usually a better source of information, because it's not having to filter itself through physical senses. So you can have the internal word, the words just appear internally in your mind, or you can be, moved to write down certain words, certain things. The ideas might come instead of the words that communicate those ideas. Or sometimes visions. Some people see only, or think only visually. In that case, they're probably going to get a flash, that's going to be basically a photograph of their answer. And so you've got to kind of just work with however it comes. What most important is that if you've connected with the spirit, if you can feel its presence there, and if you're asking a question, assume that whatever comes is from that spirit. It might not be. It might be your imagination. The only way to find out is to follow it and see. And so go ahead and ask a question. Write down the answer as it comes to you. Move on to the next question. Each is going to get more and more realistic, more and more solid. Your doubt and fear are going to fade with each question that you ask. And then you've got full-on spirit communication. I've done this to write an entire book, Book of Azazel, where I was like, hey, teach me everything you know. He did. I took notes, and it became a book. So if you're feeling that pulsing, interestingly, Konstantinos, an author that wrote some books for Llewellyn Publishing, I can't remember what book, I think it may have been in Summoning Spirits, where he's talking about activating the different energy centers and developing clairvoyance and clairaudience. He said that you can imagine there are these black orbs that are by your ears, and when you're in the presence of a spirit, that they kind of start to fluctuate, and that can create an audible pulsing. And so, yeah, if people are talking about you, and they're talking about you and thinking about you intensely enough to direct energy towards you, it can produce something very similar. So, no, that's really, really interesting. So once you feel that pulsing, basically I would do the same thing you would for spirit communication. Get a piece of paper out, ask yourself a couple questions about that pulsing. Once again, and I can't state this enough, you cannot get an answer unless you ask a question. You can't just be like, oh, what are they saying? What are they saying about me? What is their intention? Why are they talking about me? Who told these guys about me? Whatever. Try to be as specific as you can while still leaving room for a good answer. And then you're going to get the answer is going to start flowing. Trust it, but don't trust it enough to do stupid things. Some people will say, I've had so many people that have inserted their own emotional content into what they think are visions and revelations, and then completely screwed up their life by acting on it before having really any kind of validation. You do want... The thing that separates magic from mysticism, really, magic produces results, and mysticism does not, absolutely does not. And so you always have to have an eye for the results and for the physical world's validation of what you're doing. So if you hear something and you get a specific message and you get certain things, I start to be maybe a little sneaky about it to see if you can validate what you were told in some sort of physical way. And I would say always make sure you have really good validation. before doing anything stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, after you have validation, be as stupid as you want, but you don't want to destroy relationships or put yourself in a bad situation by reacting to something that may or may not have been spirit communication or intuition or something like that. You want to make sure that you're right. At least I do.
Would you say that's especially if it's like a non-human entity?
What do you mean?
Like, from my experience with the entities that I've experienced that are non-human, they can be pretty tricksy, and sometimes they'll just want that chaos, so they'll like encourage you to do something stupid. And yeah,
A lot of these the non-human entities are the ones that interact with us. The human race came across these other beings like pretty much right off the bat. Like as soon as we were, come down from the trees and start, making fires and stuff, we start doing magic. I mean, that was like one of the first things people started doing. Before we built the wheel, we were doing magic and communicating with spirits. And so these spirits seem, especially looking at the ancient religions, seem to be teachers. And teachers, the best teachers, want you to learn through experience. And so, yeah, some of them will be like, oh, hey, yeah, I'll help you. And then they completely throw a wrench in your life so that way you'll learn. And you do learn. You're like, oh, wow, I never would have learned those lessons if it weren't for that, but it still sucks. But with that said, I have found that people lie more than spirits do. People, especially religious people, accuse spirits of being, they're always trying to deceive you. It's like, you're just trying to deceive me right now by telling me that. Like, people are always lying. And so, you can't trust anybody, really. so yeah. With some spirits, I mean, just like with people, if somebody just came, you've never met them before, and they come and tell you to do something really, really drastic with your life, you'd be like, let me think about it. For some reason, people will see a spirit once and be like, oh yeah, of course I'll go rearrange everything for you. And these are all beings. Nothing is perfect at all. So yeah. But yeah. So that'll be a way to kind of follow that pulsing. Just sit and take notes. Assume that it's real and validate it. Something happens interesting when you write this down, and that's why I'm telling you to take actual notes with pen and paper, because that hardwires it into your mind. There's something that's been noticed that as technology is getting more and more available, and they're having less paper writing and more computer writing and computer interaction, they're noticing that you're losing something. That when you're taking physical notes with pen and paper, you're hardwiring it you're taking the information out of your short-term memory and putting it into your middle-term memory. And then from there, it can transfer into your long-term if you put it into application. Without that, though, if you're just putting it on a screen, at this point, the human consciousness hasn't really locked onto a screen as being real. Whereas a piece of paper you can feel and smell and touch is real. The pen or pencil is real. And so when you're writing down, we've also kind of learned through humanity's history of writing that you don't write down things that aren't important. You don't write down just gibberish for the most part. Sometimes you do, but for the most part, if you're writing something down, it's because it has a meaning. And so what you're doing when you're writing down spirit communication or intuition is you're telling yourself that this is real and this is meaningful. That kind of locks it into your mind as that being real and meaningful. That paves the way for greater communication in the future every time. You're basically doing a symbolic affirmation every time you write something down that you're getting spiritually. So, yeah.
How do you stay in the trance state while you're writing? Because there have been times that I've been driving, for instance, and you're right, it starts with one question, and then it's just a bombarding of questions, and half the time there's no answer, but the questions themselves are the answer, and so you just go in and go, and so it's snowball effect, and all this information, and then like 2 days later it's gone. But if you were to be writing it down, you'd be going so slow, and you'd be blocking it and slowing it down, and then how do you...
that's great, because that's some of the stuff I've struggled with as well, especially being a writer and having these experiences. Writing is much slower than thought. Okay, so one thing is that, and people ask this quite a bit, is like, okay, so I'll go to take notes while the Spirit's talking, but it's already like paragraphs ahead of where I'm writing. Space and time does not exist for them. So you can pause the replay and start it up whenever you want. You can just say, give me a second, catch up, go, and it'll basically pick up right where it left off. Time and space does not exist for them. They're communicating with you from, once again, the crossroads, which is a point. It's a point in time and space, rather than a line or circle or any of that. And so, in that communication, the only thing that exists in time and space is your consciousness. And so, you can just target it by saying, please stop, taking notes, and then coming back to it. I discovered that by accident, because I was having so many communication experiences and taking so many notes that, I was always getting behind in writing what they're saying. And so I'd be like, yeah, please, and I think that they're going to get offended or whatever. But no, it is just like they pause and just kind of hold there until you're ready. Okay, go ahead, and then boom, it all resumes. So that's one thing. But you do, in order to write clearly, you do have to kind of bring your state of being, your state of awareness back up into the higher conscious ranges. You can still write in theta, but your writing's going to be really, really sloppy. It's going to be hard to read afterwards, and you're probably going to find that you've missed most of the words. Like it's just not clear. And so you would kind of do a rise and fall. You pull yourself up to take the notes. So you do that like a couple sentences at a time, and then pause, and then take notes. What I started doing is recording it on just a voice recorder. I was out at Burning Man, and I was doing a bunch of ceremonies out there, out in the middle of the desert. I didn't bring all my equipment because it's Burning Man. I didn't want to destroy everything. And so I pulled my phone out and just got the recording app on there and recorded it. And then, because recording it is important, because once again, in theta, your memory is not working too well, and so you can't remember the questions you had. But then when you come out of it, you also can't remember the answers you got. It seems like it was a dream. And so you're basically going to just record it, just basically channel it. And when you're doing that leads to something interesting, especially if you're doing a communication with a spirit rather than like an intuitive force. When you're writing it down and you're talking to it, and you kind of see the spirit as being like there, like I'm pointing over there to demonstrate the spirit. So the spirit's right there. You created a perceived perception, or perceived separation. So you're seeing that being as being outside of yourself, and you're talking to it. When it starts talking through you, so you'll pick up your voice recorder, and you'll start repeating what you're hearing. And then if you're no longer repeating what you're hearing, but it is coming out of your mouth at the same time you're receiving it, you're bordering on a state most people call possession. You call it invocation, inspiration, but it's all the same thing. So that spirit is no longer perceived to be outside of you. Then there can be a merger of identity, at least in some degree, or for a small amount of time, where you're not you anymore. That's okay. That's fine. I would beware of doing that with too many. With doing that with wrong spirits that you don't trust. I mean, letting them inside of yourself. But yeah. What's that expression telling me?
Have you ever done that? Where you felt that? Where you were there, they were you? How does that feel? Because I cannot imagine it being anything but me.
It's disturbing. It is. It's I've done it mostly on purpose, so it's not so bad. It feels like it just feels like you've transformed into something else. You are still back there, but you're back there. You're kind of you're observing yourself rather than being yourself.
So you're the third person.
Like between first and third, like you ever seen Being John Malkovich by any chance? It's not a great movie. It is really not. I love John Malkovich.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah, right.
Like the one time that I experienced that was completely unintentional because I'm a medium, so occasionally things would happen before I learned how to take control of everything. And for me, it felt like I was suffocating. But at the same time, like, as you said, you're like in between that person and first person state. And it's weird. It's kind of something you can't really explain to somebody else.
Was it a spirit of a deceased person that you were? So it was something non-human?
Yeah.
And that produces.
That's probably why I felt like I was suffocating, because it wasn't like, it was completely out of the blue. And I had been like messing around with things that I didn't really understand very well. I was really young and just was like, oh, it's cool to do things like that. Yeah. No.
and it can be if you're intending for it, yeah. And you know, the first time I had that experience that I recognized what it was, because I had that where I'd start to channel things and get information. But the first time that I went, wow, this is absolutely not me. I was doing one of my very first rituals in Haitian Vodun, as calling on Legba and just asking for him to open the doors for me. And drew his baby on the ground and sprinkled rum around it, and I could hear drumming in the distance that shouldn't have been there, out in the middle of nowhere, and just started entering into that kind of morphed state. Stepped on inside of where I had the baby laid out in cornmeal, and as soon as I stepped inside, my knees just went out, fell to the ground, and I went black for probably half hour. I was gone. I don't know what I was doing. I hadn't fallen down or anything like that. I didn't black out, because I blacked out before and it wasn't that. But my memory stops and it picks up like a half hour later that I open my eyes, and my eyes are already open. I just come to, and I stand up, and it felt really, really weird to be in the body. That was the first impression. It's like it felt really weird to be physical. And so I stood up, and it felt like it was like a journey forever to stand up. If you're a spirit, you can travel like that. So standing up is like an eternity of travel. And I felt like huge. If you're a spirit, for the most part, you don't have size at all. So all of the three dimensionality of four, if you include time, of human experience was it was like an infant seeing everything for the first time. And then whatever it was left, and whatever it was being from Legba left, and it shook me. And then I puked. Like that was the instant reaction. As soon as it was gone, went threw up. And I called my mentor, Dr. the Prince, and I go, what the fuck, dude? What happened? And he goes, yeah, first of all, you should fast beforehand, because you are going to get nauseous if you don't. You should always try to have somebody else on hand that can help you, because if you can't make it go away, you don't want to be stuck as something else forever. But rather than controlling my standing up or controlling it, before he left, my arms went out like that, and I could feel my arms moving, but I wasn't. It didn't feel like my muscles were doing it. It felt like strings were pulling me up. Yeah. So yeah, it's an odd feeling. It's the benefit of it is that you have if you're working with the right spirits, that you have a teacher that can come inside of you and teach you directly without the need of communicating with words or ideas. There's a flow, and you know it. Especially if you're learning ritual, you can be like, "Hey, show me how to do this ritual," and I've had my arms just move out and start rearranging things on my altar and lighting candles and grabbing things over here. I'm like, "What the hell are you doing?" And putting together this amazing, beautiful ritual for a specific effect. And I'm like, "Wow, I never would have thought of that." But yeah, so that's a benefit of it. Drawback of it is you got to be really, really careful about what spirits you do that with, because regardless of any kind of exorcism or banishing anything, there's a connection that never goes away. Like that. Have you noticed that? Yeah. It's like they're. It's not just like they're always with you. It's like they are a part of you now. And so if you're doing it with entities you don't want to have as part of you forever, then don't do that. So yeah. Yeah. So so that's what that feels like. But when you start channeling, you've channeled your mother, and is that the only?
I did need to do it. I was in an extremely emotional state, and she sort of came around and then into me, and then through what I was saying, comfort. Like, my words came out. And it wasn't, I'll be okay, it's Flora, you'll be okay. Like, it was this really weird, I don't know. Oh, she's been deceased for a while.
Yeah. No, that's an amazing experience. And so there was nobody else that you were channeling to? Like, there was...
I wasn't even working on that. I was actually cleaning. And I was just kind of, okay, so when I need to, sometimes I'll just start singing.
Sure.
So I was singing, and then I just kind of was enjoying, and then suddenly, I started saying things, and then, what came out was not what I would say, and it was literally, my mom was everywhere. And it brought me to tears, kind of.
No, that's amazing. That's an amazing experience. Yeah, so... You weren't controlling your words, though. They were just coming. Could you have stopped them? I guess with that you wouldn't have a desire to have done that at that point.
Yeah,
but...
I didn't think about it.
Okay. Yes.
I know that I became aware that it was happening just as it was ending. And so as that awareness came, I was like, what? And then...
Okay, yeah. Getting into this, it's one of the... You have the whole idea that, once again, the harder you try, the harder it is. So you just stop trying and it all just comes. When you're actually trying to get into a channeling state, that's the hardest for me for sure, is to let go of the trying and just to let it happen. And it is odd. Almost every time, especially with distinctly non-human entities, like the further away from human they are, the harder it is on my body. Like, they'll come through, and before they'll start to talk, I'll start to choke and gasp, like not really sure how this throat thing works. And then and then it does feel like you're being taken control of, your bodily functions are being taken control of just a little bit at a time, and then before you know it, you're like stuff's just flying out of your mouth. You have no idea of push it for long enough, and you do just go out. You like, do you have amnesia experiences?
I was hit by a bus for about a week. After I was so sore everywhere, and I was like, at that time I was in pretty good shape, and I wasn't really working out a heck of a lot. So it was like, I kept trying to figure out reasons why I was feeling that way, and I was like, sick to my stomach for a couple of days. I don't think, I wasn't expecting it all, at all.
Yeah.
It was the intention to have that happen. And it was actually a pretty terrifying experience for me. I was only 13. So that's not necessarily something you expect to go through.
No, and that's why in Vodan and Santeria and these systems in Palameonde, these systems that do rely heavily on spirit contact and possession, there are years of discipline before you get to a point that even let you get that, because it is a jarring experience. And I'll watch it. I have an advantage and disadvantage in doing film as my daily job. Advantage is I have record of all of my experiments. That's the huge advantage, and I get to share that with other people, and they get to try the experiments themselves and give me their input or whatever. Disadvantage is that first I have to see myself constantly, and that causes identity issues or something, whatever. But I also I have to watch possession, because if I get possessed, it's terrifying, sickening to see your body without you in it. I don't know. It's because you're still there, but you're in the background. Something else is moving and talking, and it's it makes me nauseous.
Well, it's really nice to actually see that happening outside of your body. I feel like you did something.
Yeah. Have you ever filmed yourself in that kind of stuff? Oh, you should.
I think I've only ever had 2 encounters like that.
Okay.
And that was one, and then another one happened a couple of years ago. But that one I was a little bit more prepared for, and it was a human being. So it wasn't quite as difficult. It was easier to handle.
No, for sure. No, it is. It's a weird Because you're seeing, it does feel like you're watching your corpse, but not just your corpse that is reanimated with an alien intelligence inside of it. You're like, whoa. It makes you, it's nutty. But yeah, no, when you start speaking in first person as the spirit, whereas it's calling you by your name rather than, calling you, it does the gap between you and it thins quite a bit. I've had people who've offered to hire me for thousands of dollars to do something to get them possessed, and it's like, you got to do the work for that, because what that involves is opening yourself, and the way to open yourself is to start communicating with the spirit, and then push that communication further and further and further until there's no the spirit, it's just you. And yeah, so that's a benefit of it. There are a lot of benefits of it. The drawback is that you have something that's not you inside your body moving it, and that can be dangerous if you don't trust it to take care of your body. But the benefits, it'll teach you directly. The flow of communication is a lot more solid than having to write it down and having to hear it and try to make out what you're hearing. But yeah, if you have a voice recorder, you can record what you're doing and speak as it. I would say you should probably not do that while you're driving, but then I do it when I'm driving, so whatever. It's probably not a safe practice. But yeah, it is what it is.
Probably along the lines of drinking and driving, right?
Yeah. I think if texting and driving is bad, then being possessed and driving is probably pretty bad too.
I was wondering, so where you get this connection, and connection goes both ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you delve into them?
Can you, what do you mean by delve in?
Not necessarily pull on their connection, but follow it and actually enter into their flow.
Absolutely. So a couple of things about it. You'd mentioned people stealing your energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people who steal your energy, the psychic vampires, most of them don't know what they're doing. They're weak or sick or depressed or whatever, and they're just trying to get help. They continue that long enough, and they're disgusting people. Like, really, they're the kind of people that they're always sitting alone because nobody will sit next to them just because they feel creepy. Regardless, it's not their fault, but it's kind of, they haven't made a choice to be a different way either. So yeah, whatever. But I'm sitting, there was some call center that I was working at when I was like 19 here in town, and they had an open air court that was in the center of the whole thing. I'm sitting out there smoking a cigarette and waiting to go on shift, and I feel this pull at me. I can feel my energy just being pulled right out of me like fast. And I'd had psychic vampire situations, and I'd had whatever things like that happen. But nothing like this. It was like all of my energy was just being sucked out with a hose. And so I did exactly what you're suggesting, where I locked onto it, and I could feel like a tube. It felt like a tube with teeth, like an astral tube with teeth that were just like lashed onto me, into my side. And I just basically followed the flow of it. Where is this going? And followed it, and stood up and walked and actually followed it around a corner where there's this girl sitting there. She's in like what looks like a trance state, just kind of like tranced out, kind of like in between like a heroin high and a meditative trance, and she's really, really pale, like dark under, like just black under her eyes, like she hasn't slept for a long time. I'm looking at her, I'm like, yeah, it's absolutely you. Like, that's not even in question. Look at you. But she's in her trance deal, so I don't know that she was aware that I had come around the corner and I was looking at her, and so I could feel the connection going to her. So I basically just used her too to pull her energy out of me, pull my energy back, pull some of hers to make her sick, and she worked in the same building as I did, and she had to go home sick that day, and I don't think she came back, like, as far as I was aware. I didn't stay there long either, though, but yeah, it was so you can use that kind of mechanism if it's attacking you, to actually attack the other person. You do have to be aware of taking filthy energy into yourself. You can put up filters. You can actually just envision filters. I mean, if you can imagine it, you can use it as a tool. So imagine like the filter you put in your car, put it right in front of you. Hey, oil filter. All right, I'm imagining it. It's just imagination, but that imagination clicks into an astral reality. And you can filter out energy that way. You can also ground the negative. So it comes through you, put your hand on something that's going to connect to the earth, or you can take your shoes off and push it through your feet and just pull in the good, which all energy has like the polarities. So you'll have the good neutral energy that you just take into your being, and then you just breathe out and push down the negative. So you can do that. Now, again, Constantinos, in Summoning Spirits, talks about, he gives a way of doing evocation, where you'll go to the astral plane, you'll go do an astral travel, find the spirit you're trying to call forth, find it and start calling its name. So it'll basically look at you and be like, hey, what's up? And then you start coming back to this world, slowly, kind of letting it follow you. And by the time you get back here, the spirits come with you, and then you can summon it into form. Now, while that's not the most effective way of doing evocation, and it's a way that I've used it just enough to know that it's just not that great, for me particularly, but you can do the reverse pretty easily. So you call a spirit forth, you got its energy there, you're in communication, then when it leaves, you just follow it back. You just like basically, because it doesn't just dissipate into nothing. It'll go, there's a really powerful type of magic known as portal magic, where there are portals that you can either find or create that kind of go through wormhole through the different worlds. So you can, it'll create a portal to come to you, or really what you're doing in the evocation is you're creating a portal for it to come through. Being the triangle, the circle, or even the incense is a type of portal. So follow that through and see where, connect to its energy. Depending on the spirit, it might be offended that you did that. Like it might not have wanted you to follow it home. It's always best to ask before going into somebody's house, I guess. So if you think that it might be getting, if you even have like an inkling that you might be like trespassing into something, that just ask it, be like, hey, show me where you live, and they can do that. In order to do that, obviously all of this assumes that you can soul travel. You can leave your body, have out-of-body experiences. A lot of people don't think they can. Everybody can. Everybody does it. You do it nightly when you sleep. If you daydream, a lot of times you'll leave your body in some degree. And so you can do it. It's just a matter of being conscious of it. But yeah. So then you kind of have to have that as a precursor to be. Can you do that? Do you have out-of-body experiences?
I've actually never.
Okay.
I was continuing to go visit a friend, and I got waylaid by this. The only way I can describe it is this river of knowledge. There were symbols everywhere. It was like this golden thing, and if I tried to focus on it, it was so much. But it was beautiful that I just kind of ended up staying there for a while.
You were trying to follow a friend.
Well, yeah. I have this friend that lives in Nebraska, and when him and I were close, we decided that we were going to meet each other. And so I kind of grabbed onto his core, I don't know, his energy connection with me, and I followed it, and then I ended up, I don't know if that was just like the crossroads or something, and then I never finished, but that's where I ended up. And I know I was astral projecting because I was aware of my body still, but I know I was not in my body anymore.
Huh.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, and that's actually, you just said a key to the, and I would, excuse me, I'd say that goes beyond astral projection into what I call soul travel, where what you're seeing is a flow rather than like an object. Like, okay, so in the astral plane, you've got source with the center of all things, and then all these different gradient layers until you reach physical materialization. the closer you are to physical materialization, the more visible you see. And so, if you had actually seen a river, and that river like sparkled and like fish jumped out of the symbol written on it, I'd say that could be astral. Where you're seeing the current of information itself is you're seeing it for what it is. That sounds like it's the mental. No, so I mean what that means is that you went beyond the astral and the causal plane into the mental. That's interesting. That's really interesting because when you soul travel, especially if you do it spontaneously, or if you do it undirectly, then you're going to go to wherever your vibration is naturally attuned to. So like most of the time I'm in what's called formative plane, where things are created. So you have like divine light and sound that's pretty much indefinable, and then it comes to this formative plane and is intentionalized, and then it comes to the lower planes and is created into all the various creations. That's where I spend most of my time because I'm always trying to create things. And so if I soul travel, just hop out of my body, I'll be there. That's just what I naturally come to. So for some reason, you just naturally come to it. I would say, based on what you said.
I know the next one is very difficult. I wasn't exactly exhausted, but doing physical, like my mind was completely disconnected. And then I'd be sitting there and suddenly visions just kept coming into me and I couldn't get rid of them. But my body itself just didn't want to. I don't know, it was very complex.
Yeah. So is that the only time you jumped out of your body like that? Or?
It was the biggest. The other ones are more, as I call it, well-known.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so using the same kind of process, which is easy. I mean, I say it's easy. It took me like a 13-hour video course of teaching this, so it's like 13 hours of instruction easy. But you can do it. You focus on an object across the room and breathe, and as you're breathing, looking at that object, you can feel the expansion and contraction of your energy states with the breathing. And then you exhale. Specifically, exhalation is important. Getting in your body, exhale and feel yourself jump forward just a little bit. It'll feel just like a little jolt. And a lot of times it's like, oh wow, that was really interesting and cool. Do that a few times until you get used to it, and then take a deep breath and just push yourself out. It'll feel like you went out, and then in your inner vision, you'll see what you were looking at. You see it up close and personal. Usually just for a few seconds, and you snap back. You're like, oh wow, that's interesting. It's pretty easy to do. The further out you get from your body, the easier it is to stay out. You have like a gravitational well, like an event horizon that pulls your subtle bodies into connects your subtle bodies to your physical body. So you can jump out. So up at the old airport, I don't know what that was called, Airport Drive, Yeah, I was working on a house up there. I've been co-painting and decorative finish for quite a while. I'm standing up on the balcony out there, looking over the whole town, and I see a street corner, and just up there, like 7 o'clock in the morning, smoking a cigarette, drinking coffee, just kind of getting my morning going. But you know what? I'll go ahead and do a little meditation. So I started getting into rhythmic breathing and dropping my mind state. And while I'm still looking at just these corners, several miles down, just down the street from where the temple's at. And I breathe out, and I was just out of the body. I was on the street, and it was like full. I felt like my body had just beamed out of that street corner. And then I sit back up in my body, and I was like, oh shit, that's crazy. But because I was projecting myself much farther in distance than I ever had before, that it was an easier and more real experience. So, yeah. But yeah, as far as how to work with energy, I mean, there's a couple ways that you can kind of follow it and become more aware of it. Okay, so one way that you can do it is on a more personal level that might be more accessible for just about anybody is to build an energy orb in your hands. So your hands are very powerful spiritual tools, and they can be very polarized. You know, it's not necessarily that your left hand is always the negative and the right hand is always the positive, but even your different fingers have different polarities, different joints. Your hands are very, very interesting, advanced spiritual tools. And so if you hold your hands out, you might be able to feel a magnetic push and pull in your hands. You just relax your body. You can feel it. If you can't feel it right away, you can brush your fingertips together, and just a light brush, and that'll basically what that does is it just melts your fingers. And having numb fingers is good if you're having a hard time relaxing. And so your hands have to be completely relaxed. They kind of tingle a little bit, and then you got to push and pull and the flow much better. You hold it there for a while, and you start feeding energy and tension into it. So I had with my mentor, my very first mentor, Baba Maharaja, teach me this, and he's like, yeah, it's just a good way to gauge your energy. He's like, if you have low energy, if you're thinking negative things, if you're, for whatever reason, not in a high vibrational state, your hands will be really close together. If you're in a high vibrational state, they'll be further apart. And so he's like, that's just a good way of gauging that. But as I was playing with that, I started noticing that it's not just a gauge, but that as you do it more, you have a ball that starts to form in your hand. And that ball can get so seemingly solid that, you feel like it's a glass ball that just materializes there. And then you start feeding it intention, you start feeding it your energy. So an easy way to do this is to feed it with chakra energy. So you can go, I did this with my throat chakra. That was one of the first times that I actually played with this. So I was trying to make myself invisible, not physically visible, but I wanted to go unnoticed. And so I did this orb, and then breathed, and I felt that my breath was coming out of my throat rather than out of my mouth, and discharging into the orb. You can do it that way. You can also hold the chakra energy deeper inside yourself and cycle it through your hands, through your fingers. So those are two ways to do it. You can also breathe it into there, so you actually blow with your mouth the energy that you want to put in that ball. And then for that instance, I just felt that expand, and I can just hold it until I feel it like a bubble around me. And then that bubble is filled with the airy throat chakra energy, which worked perfectly for that instance. You can also create one of these with hate, anger, and malice, and throw it some. And when they throw that, they can have interesting things happen. I know somebody who she's like a pagan road rager or something. She'll do that on the road. She'll somebody that cuts her off or whatever. As soon as she's at a light, she'll get her foot on the brake and oh, I'm like, what the hell? That's pretty intense. You don't know what's going to happen with that. It's a domino into effect. But yeah, so that's an intense reaction or an intense way to handle frustrations. But yeah, you can do that with all kinds of things. An interesting game is if you have two people, and to play this game, you have to be non-attached. You can't be concerned about whether you win or lose this game. You just have to experiment with it and have fun with it. But stand across the room, or sit across the room. I used to do this on the porch of the house I was renting. My roommate and I would do this. Create the wall and put an element, one of the four elements. Spirit's kind of hard to do, or Akasha, or whatever the fifth element people will call it is. But the elements fire, water, and air. Put those in the floor, you just pass it to the other person, have them catch it, tell you what element it is. About 70% of the time they're right, which is way above what statistics say, which should be awesome. So that's a fun thing you can do with that. You can build a source with anything specific. Something you can do that's fun, and it kind of trips people out if they're not into this kind of thing. But I haven't yet had anybody complain about it. Is you do that with just golden light, and so you feel like there's golden light around you. As soon as you become aware of anything, you start to manifest it. So you become aware of the presence of golden light and breathe in and feel it come into your body. And do that until you feel like your body's glowing, and then make the orb, put that golden light into that orb, and then go crack it like an egg over someone's head. I'd ask them first, you know, people get weird when you start. But yeah, I'd say, hey, can I do something? So, a girl that I was working with did that. I can't remember what she said. It was like, you might like be on aura bath. I'm like, aura bath? Like, that sounds kinky, sure. And that's what that was. It's like, oh. But it is a good feeling. It's like a warm golden tingles all over. It's like, wow, that's cool. And you feel energized and just, like everything's just a little bit better. It's like crazy. And yeah, so you can do that, and that'll kind of give you some interesting experiences with, like, you know, like, you're actually interacting with this energy. You can do that to yourself. Giving yourself the whole aura bath thing isn't as fun as it's doing somebody else to do it too, but yeah, I don't know, it's a connection and transfer of energy between two distinct personalities. I think that makes it so interesting. But yeah, so those are some ways you can start to interact with your energy. You can
we just like run around and do like, it would be like Nerf guns or energy bombs. It was that.
Were you knock each other down with them at all?
I did it to my friend once and I knocked her on her butt and she was like, I don't even know how that happened. And it's like, you can recall what you were doing.
You can, you know, a way of directly doing this, and this is actually how I taught myself how to do psychic vampirism. I kind of stumbled on it. I came across this blessing that you do. It's like just some wicked blessing that you put your right hand on somebody and say, by the power of the stars, I give you my strength. I transfer all of my vitality into you so you can be healed. Right? So I said, I mean, you can reverse that. Left hand, say the opposite. And sure enough, it doesn't matter what you say, even about the power of the stars or the power of anything else, it doesn't matter. Because all it is just a verbal affirmation of what you're intending. And so yeah, do that. Power of law, take my energy. Take specific sort of energy. If you're trying to kill somebody, I would be careful about taking their negative energy into you, because they're going to get sick. There is something, exorcists die of mysterious reasons a lot. Because they're trying to take a force out of somebody and they're grounding it to themselves. They don't know they're doing this because they're indoctrinated through dogma. But they're actually grounding the spiritual force to themselves. Life expectancy of a person once they enter into active full-time exorcism work is about 2 years. Within 2 years they're going to die. Some live longer than that, but that's the average expected time of death of the exorcist. In the same way, spiritual healers often have a lot of really odd illnesses come up. They have a lot of basically their body just starts failing really fast because they're channeling all that to them. And so you can take some of these negative energy out of them. My little sister is a massage therapist. She taught at an academy in Las Vegas. She tells me one day and says, "Hey, can you come do a lecture at my court?" I'm like, I don't know the first thing about massage at all. She goes, no, I want you to talk about energy work and auras and stuff like that, because we're talking about mind-body connection and energy and all that. Yeah, sure. So we go in there and I kind of see how people are doing the massage. And I'm like, and I actually have an energy massage therapist do this. You're collecting all of that energy in your wrists and elbows. So you can see it and feel it as they're rubbing. So most people's aches and pains come from stress. And so you're taking all that stress and putting it into your joints. And then you have the joints, you have arthritis, you have all those issues. And so when you get done with certain passes, click your fingers on and you can flip that energy out. At the end of every massage, have some salt water in there. Put your hands in and it'll suck all that energy out of your hands. So
my mom would go stand outside with their therapy, just like stand on the grass and they're
that's perfect. Because the earth does a really good job of absorbing our trash.
The energy releases for every single you should do this for the last 30 minutes, so that they would have a really long time.
Yeah. Is she, how's her joints doing?
Oh, she's, well,
Yeah.
car accidents say she's not, but she's fine.
Yeah. Well, what's with the car accident? She's like, great.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, that's an important thing to kind of keep in mind. I went to this up to Salt Lake around Redwood Road. They had a botanical that I went to. I go in there and they're like, oh wow, you have a lot of energy and spirits around you. Yeah. Like, come to our service. We're going to do a service. And okay, cool. So I go to that night and they were doing this whole, some mass possession. Like everyone's getting possessed by ancestor spirits and whatever. I was like, wow, this is like, there's thick energy in there. I'm the only white person in the entire place, and like, wow, this is like cool. And like one girl comes up, she's all, what are you doing here? Like, we don't have white people in kids, I'm special. And so at the end of it, after it's all over, the lady who's going to be officiator of this whole thing goes up and she would grab each person by their elbows, and she'd kind of like pull their arm from the wall until they were kind of locks. And she'd pull until she hit their wrist, and then do the same thing, and let it lock, and then pull again. What's wrong with that? And that's just removing that energy from those joints. And the joints are really, really they're like little like vacuum locks for energy. So that is something to be aware of if you're working with other people's energy a lot to do things like that. And if you're doing that to yourself, it's not going to have the same effect. That's a hard way to pull energy out of yourself. So, standing out on the grass or on the earth with your feet actually on the earth is good. Salt water hand rinse is perfect.
She did that after. So she washed her hands and she goes there at like 10 minutes. But she was just gone.
Yeah. Okay. So was she witchy or was she hippie?
No.
Oh.
She's actually LDS.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But she's very like in tune with spiritual on a non-religious standpoint too.
Yeah.
So
No, obviously, yeah.
She when she got her degree in massage therapy, she learned some stuff from having a whole bunch of Eastern and being like talking all this stuff about energy and seeing energy. And she reads auras and she does all that stuff. Anyways, she delved into it and like, she was really good at it. I mean,
Has she found a conflict between that and real yes?
somehow she tied it all in.
That's cool. That's cool.
I'm like, oh, there you go.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, you can really, if you're not dogmatic, if you're actually like taking and using the whatever your religion is for your personal benefit, yeah, you can tie it all in. If you're using it as like a better than you kind of thing, obviously, you're involved in there.
She knows so many people. She's like, getting people on her table and she never met before and you tell them their entire medical history. You're like, this is what's wrong with you. And yeah, he's like, understand what you just heard.
Now, so for those who can't see auras, are you able to target chakras at all? I can see the glow of chakras. Yeah, I'm sure try it. I mean, just turn your attention to it. Once again, as soon as you kind of wear something, it starts to manifest for you. So can you see the actual chakra span and kind of diagnose what's going on with the person through that?
I can see general aura, and I can see each color.
And each colored and oh wow, you got really into tune vision. That's really cool. Well, are you doing anything with that? I mean, like, you should do something with that. That's awesome. I mean, I don't know what your career path is, but it should be something really cool because that's oh man, that would be awesome. Like, yeah. I walked into my first mentor, Raj's apartment. First time I meet him, he's all, oh, we've met before. But no, I don't live here. He's all, no. He goes, what's it here? It was back in the temple. That was a few nights ago. You'll remember later. Okay, here we go. And he looks at me and he's all, he looks at me and he kind of like scans me up and down. I'm like, oh, great, this is going. He goes, yeah, so she starts like telling me all about my life and my personality and what was going on with me. I looked at my friend that brought me and like introduced me to you. She said, I didn't say anything besides your name. And I was, so what's the story? How do you know? Because I'm seeing your chakras. Your whole energy system is telling you you're not above. And yeah, everybody is. And that's, so even though people are always lying, like, you can look at them and see exactly what's going on with everything. And the chakras are a really good way of kind of telling what's going on with the person. Look at it go. You know, and you would have a pendulum type of object. Okay, well, no. See, your necklace would work alright. So if you hold that in that kind of angle, and you do this over, like I'll do this. If you let it dangle and then you do it over your body, so you slowly do it over yourself or over another person. Then you can feel, and it is best to lay down. I don't think I'm going to make you lay down on the table.
Lay down.
But you know, and do it over like a, you know, a blind item, like this table. Just kind of hold it over there and let it hang. Oh, you know.
Hey, you know what?
I got a pendulum like with me all the time. So yeah, just let it hang, and then not to spin too much because that obviously will just create a difference in the pressure as it spins. But kind of feel the static pressure of it. So it's just, there is no reason that this should pull any more or any less without any weight being added to it. But you put somebody on this table and do it over their chakras, starting at their head and going down, you'll feel it pull or you'll feel it lift over certain of the chakras. You're not necessarily looking for a standard pull or push of it. What you're looking for is a variance. And so they should all be, your chakras are good if they're all aligned. If you're not going to compare your chakras to somebody else's chakras, if they're all working in unison, they're all going to have the same amount of pull. If one's pulling too hard, it's overactivated because they're trying too hard, or if people are sick, their heart chakra will be overactivated. You'll be trying to kill them, so that'll pull. Yeah, most people have a solar plexus that pulls quite a bit, so most people are kind of inwardly driven with their emotions. Yeah, so you can do that, just pass it over them a couple times. And I will do a couple times because I want to make sure that the same chakras are still pulling, that it wasn't just my imagination or a glitch or whatever. So I'll do it a few times, and you can I have had people tell me, people who don't believe any of this until I started showing it to them, that they can see the lengthening of the string or the chain. They can actually see the pull. I'm not looking at it from that angle, I'm not paying attention to that so much, I'm just trying to be clear, and so I just feel the weight of the decrease. And yeah, and that'll just kind of put you into a closer connection with that energy. Yeah, and then you can transfer, as far as transferring energy into and out of people, you can do that through the chakras. There was a group, we use magic every time I mention the name, so I'm not going to. But I'm part of this group that is a pretty nefarious vampiric, satanic group that they would use psychic vampirism, not just as a way to get energy, but as a weapon against the masses, really. And so that's one thing that they would do. Most psychic vampires will just feed off what's kind of on your aura and just kind of dripping out of you, basically like the psychic garbage that flows off you. This group will teach you how to target the chakras. And so you'd start pushing into whatever chakra was most available, and then eventually if you can push through the root chakra or the crown chakra, you can potentially kill the person by just taking the energy. And you're taking not like the residual, you're like reaching in and grabbing the core, serious energy out of that person. So, then you can obviously, all things can be reversed, so you can do the opposite where you're trying. I legally can't say that I heal people because I'm not a medical practitioner. What's that? Right, yeah, the FDA definitely does not prove to me. But I've encouraged healing in some people by transferring my energy directly to their heart chakra. Your heart chakra is healing and life-giving, and so you hold your hand over and push it so you feel the flow of energy through your being, and your energy naturally will flow. It kind of cycles and cycles, and then flows down your arms and into your hands and your legs. It'll often round just enough through your feet, and then it'll kind of cycle back through your hands unless you're touching things, and it'll kind of cycle into that. And so when you become aware of the flow of energy, you can then direct it. And so you just direct it into that person's, directly into their heart chakra. You gotta push somewhat with it, so you gotta just be a bit more forceful with your willing of that energy to leave you. It actually goes through into the chakras, and then you leave their chakra directly. No, you're good. Thank you for coming. I'm wrapping up actually, so anybody have any questions that I can answer before I'm off? Questions, Miguel?
Heck yes.
Have a good one.